being live streamed on YouTube. Appreciate everybody's time and investment in the board and the good work that everyone involved does to help the residents of Tennessee find good jobs. I'm going to assume that everybody's here, and I think we'll go ahead and get started. I appreciate Patrice and all the technological work she did to help us get in our breakout sessions, and with just a few glitches, I think those all went off very well. As we're in the meeting, just ask that you make sure you have your microphones muted unless you're called on to speak or are presenting. So double check that right now, please. And then if you want to have your microphone unmuted, use the chat feature and make that request. And let us know that you want to chime in, and we'll call on you, unmute your mic, and we'll hear what you have to say or questions you might have or input or discussion when it comes to voting and motions and things like that. All right, let's see what else. As you guys know, we have a bigger board than we have had in the past. Some federal regulations required us to reconfigure that. So our state plan was approved on May 29th. Bylaws for the new configurations were amended, and we got them approved by executive committee. So we have 3 new board members appointed by the governor's office since our last meeting, and that's Jonathan Cantrell, Rick Isaacson, and Rusty Vi. So thank you for joining us, and welcome to all of you. Thanks for being a part of that. Again, I wish we were in person to give you a more proper welcome and let you stand up and look at your handsome faces, but we'll do that another time. We're going to be voting several times during the meeting, and so we'll have to do the minutes from the last meeting. We have a couple of local plan approvals, and we have a couple of policy approvals. And so what we'll do is we'll assume that everybody's in agreement, but we'll ask you to use the chat feature if you have a question, discussion, or are opposing or abstaining from the vote. Okay, so we'll remind you of those procedures as we get closer to those votes, but hopefully that makes sense to everybody. It's the virtual way to vote. Hopefully it'll keep the technology rolling. And then, Stuart, I just want to, on a personal note, congratulations. It's my understanding you got a promotion to Executive Vice President of Operations at the lead company since our last meeting. So congratulations to you. And thanks for all the good work you do on the board. And clearly you're doing good work for the lead company as well. So just wanted to recognize that and make sure everybody knew that if you get a chance to reach out to Stuart. And Eiler, is there anything else I've forgotten before you take roll call, or are you ready to do that?
No, sir, we're ready.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I believe that Justin's going to take everyone off of mute so that we can begin the roll call. It'll just be for a brief moment, and then we'll put everybody back on mute. And as I call your name, please confirm your attendance. If you are a member of a local workforce development board, please state the local board. And if you are representing by proxy, please state your name for the record. Martha Axford. Once again, Martha Axford.
Present. I represent the East Region.
Good morning. South for State Senator Paul Bailey. Once again, Brandy Faust. Interim Assistant Commissioner Jay Baker.
Present.
Deputy Commissioner Sherelle Campbell Street for Commissioner Danielle Barnes.
Present.
Jason Bates.
Present.
Tim Berry.
Present.
Sarah Noel for State Representative Clark Boyd. Once again, Sarah Noel. Bonnie Brewer. Ronnie Brewer.
Present.
Mayor Kevin Brooks.
Present.
Jonathan Cantrell. Once again, Jonathan Cantrell. Michelle Falcone.
Present.
Ben Ferguson.
Present. Represent Southwest Local Workforce Boards.
Bill Godwin.
Present.
Marshall Graves.
Marshall Graves is present, representing Southeast Tennessee Workforce Development Board.
Ann Hatcher. Once again, Ann Hatcher. Christine Hopkins. Once again, Christine Hopkins. Rick Isaacson.
Present.
J. Paul Jackson. Once again, J. Paul Jackson. Assistant Commissioner Mandy Johnson.
Present.
Commissioner Jeff McCord.
Present.
Vonda McDaniel.
Present.
Mayor E.L. Morton.
Present.
Policy Director Tony Nickmazad for Governor Bill Lee.
Present.
Greg Persinger. Once again, Greg Persinger.
Present.
Stuart Price.
Present.
Once again, Barry Ray.
Present.
Director Ann Thompson for Commissioner Bob Rolfe.
Good morning, I'm present.
Proxy, Senior Director Steve Cleo for Chief of Programs Jean Luna.
Present.
Kyle Spurgeon.
Present.
Jeff Vance.
Present.
Kevin Vaughn.
Present.
Rusty Vi.
Present.
Ron Wade.
Present.
Good morning, everyone, and Chairman Barry, we have a quorum.
That's great news. Eiler, thank you for doing that, and thank you for all of the preparation work you did to help get us all on here at the same time with all the materials we need. So thank you for that. We do want to ask for approval of the minutes, though I'm assuming that everyone's had a chance to review those. And I will ask for a motion by chat to accept the minutes as presented. Would anyone like to make that motion? All right, I have a motion from Tony. Anyone second? And a second from Ben Ferguson. And so I'm looking for any discussion. If you have any discussion or question, please do so through the chat. Okay, and then if I see no discussion on chat or requests for that, so I'm going to assume that everyone is going to approve the motion as presented unless at this point on chat you abstain or oppose. Okay, and seeing none, we will approve the minutes as presented. So thank you for that. All right, Commissioner McCord, why don't you give a little summary or an overview of what's been going on and your take on the
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. It's good to see you, even if in little virtual squares. I hope everybody's staying well during these times. I think the major theme for us now is transitioning to work. We've been able to really crank up our RESA programs. We've been able to do some things that we've never done before. For example, connecting unemployed individuals or recently unemployed individuals to Tennessee Reconnect in a very big way. THEC is currently working through 500,000 potentially eligible people in the state of Tennessee who might have access to free skill development to find a better, more meaningful job. And of course, we are also worried about capability development. So our apprenticeship in partnership with our other agencies on the Workforce Development Steering Team is starting to set new records even during a pandemic. So we're very excited about that. In the midst of all that, we're still, even though a lot lower, we're still working through a very large volume of unemployment insurance claims. And I think our sense of urgency to get folks back to work is because those benefits will exhaust. They'll begin to exhaust. We'll see people basically run out of benefits here in the next few weeks, but certainly before the end of the year or right at the end of the year, all those federal programs go away. So it's with a renewed sense of urgency that we're working to move people to work. And I think, Chairman Berry, the operative word is work around our office these days. And so just want to communicate that to everyone on the board, and whatever you can do to spread that word would be greatly appreciated. With that, I'll hand it back to you, Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, the still overwhelming number, but glad to see we're moving that number in the right direction. So thanks for all the good work that everybody's doing to make that happen as we see those results each month. We're pleased and honored to have with us today from the Tennessee Board of Regents, Flora Tidings, Russ Deaton, and Wendy Thompson. You have a couple of handouts that you should have received last night from them that you can review. And I think they're going to be presenting this morning. So I'll turn it over to the three of you, and you can let us know what's happening in your agency. Okay, I'm seeing that they are not yet joining us. So let's move on to Rusty Fells for an unemployment insurance update. If you're with us, Rusty.
Good morning, Chairman Berry. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, coming in great.
Good deal. Thank you for having me again, Chairman Berry. And again, I'll take the opportunity to say for all the support that you have given me the last several years. And thank you, State Workforce Board, for the opportunity to speak again. What I'm going to do this morning is just give a very brief update and then turn it back over to you. I think, as Commissioner McCord said, the unemployment facts are what they are. And I think at this point, this many months in, I can begin to sound robotic about talking about all the challenges and the numbers and everything. So what I wanted to do is just give a brief update. Since mid-March, the unemployment division has processed somewhere between 900,000 to 1 million new claims. That's a mind-boggling number, but the next number I'll give you is even more mind-boggling. We have paid out in the vicinity of $6 billion in benefits in this state amongst all the different programs. And those are significant, significant accomplishments. To quote Commissioner McCord, he said the other day, Rusty, that almost sounds impossible. But we've somehow been able to do it. We've had a lot of support and extra resources come to our aid, as I've said before. But a lot of those people that came to our aid are having to go back to their daily duties, and one of those being the return to work efforts that Dr. Lovett and his staff and the State Workforce Board are working so hard on. And to quote Commissioner McCord again, the key word in this state is work. We've got to get our workforce back out there. And I think at some point, as hard as this may be, and the obstacles that it presents, I think at some point in the very near future, Tennessee will be looked at as a leader in this country. I know from being on national calls, Chairman Barry, that there's a lot of states that haven't even started this discussion and are not going to start the discussion until sometime in 2021. You and I have talked openly before. Everybody's aware that with people being off that long, we've got to worry about when they go through separations next year. And is there going to be unemployment benefits and food for the table? And those are real concerns. In the UI division, we have seen the claims numbers decline some, and we're glad for that. But it's no secret that the unemployment division faces many, many challenges in the coming months because these last 8 to 9 months of unprecedented work that we've been faced with, while the numbers may be going down, we are presented with several backlogs in our division that have been caused by the sheer volume and the confusion from the different programs that the federal government put out. And anytime you throw a program into the mix to pay people who are not normally eligible for unemployment, and then that adds a level too. So to Commissioner's point, we're gonna be facing a significant challenge with those people running out of benefits soon, based on the federal guidelines, and we don't know at a congressional level what's coming next. So we've got to prepare our state. One of the biggest challenges that we have faced in the unemployment division lately is there's some looseness to the interpretation of the PUA program. And so that has presented us with significant challenges in facing fraud. And that's at a national level. It's a topic that's discussed every single time we're on a call and with USDOL. And so we're having to be very careful. We're having to slow down and process things a little slower and pay a lot of attention to that because we don't want to overpay benefits, whether they're state benefits or federal benefits. So that's probably our biggest challenge right now with the backlogs. And lastly, I'll finish by saying, the return to work, while that is the right answer, and that's what we need to do in this state for our workforce's benefit and our employers' benefit, it has brought us significant challenges because there's confusion about, well, if I was self-employed, do I fit into this mix? Or if I had a COVID exception, do I fit into this mix? Well, you may have had a COVID exception at one time, but a COVID exception doesn't last 8 months. So we've had a lot of appeals filed that we've had to work through and try to clarify that. But I'll finish by saying this. I am super lucky to have a deputy commissioner who she and I both came from the workforce side of the house. Believe it or not, that's where I started and openly walked into unemployment like Denise Thomas did. So we can kind of be labeled gluttons for punishment, I guess, in some way. But Denise and I both share a common belief, and we have a great partnership, I'm glad to say, with Dr. Lovett and his staff. Our big challenge is putting people back to work, as we're going to hear, is going to become the common theme in this state. And I'm super proud of that relationship and that affiliation with him. This state is in more than capable hands with Dr. Lovett and his staff. And he and I both have the support of Deputy Commissioner Thomas and Commissioner McCord. So I'll leave it at that. We've got a lot of work yet to do. There's no secret about that, but I think we've got to all partner together for that all important reason to get our workforce back out there. Thank you, Chairman Barry.
Thank you, Rusty. Again, I appreciate you just being candid with the upcoming concerns. Again, glad we've got the numbers going in the right direction, but still quite a hill to overcome. So thank you for that update.
Yes,
Thank you. We'll watch for next steps and any actions that you recommend we take. Okay, so we have since had Tennessee Board of Regents join us, so I'm going to back up a little bit to that presentation. And again, Flora Tidings, Russ Deaton, and Wendy Thompson, we're just happy to have you with us and anxious to hear what you have to share with our board.
Well, Tim, thank you very much. And I apologize for us being late. We were actually with a group of student government leaders on another call. So thank you for giving us time to be with you this morning. What we'd like to do this morning is to talk to you a little bit about our strategic planning and what we are putting in processes. As you all know, our mission is student success and workforce development. And in doing that, you as one of our best partners, we would like to hear from this morning as to what we are doing well and what maybe we can improve on. Our ultimate goal is to improve the well-being and the lives of the people that live in Tennessee. And so we appreciate you giving us some time this morning to have that discussion with you. And I am going to turn it over to Dr. Deaton to sort of lead that discussion on our end. And Dr. Deaton, if you want to take it over.
Sure, happy to. Well, thank you, Dr. Tidings, and thank you, Tim, for the chance to be with this group today, and appreciate Kenyatta Lovett in particular helping kind of work through the details on this. A bit of context for this group, and again, as the Chancellor said, we're anxious to listen and hear your perspectives on both TBR's present and its future. We're in the process of doing a strategic plan review. Like a lot of agencies, we did a 10-year plan back in 2015 to coincide with the Drive to 55, looking ahead to 2025, which always sounded so far in the future back then, but now feels like it's right around the corner in some way. And we're doing a mid-cycle review of that. And in particular, now that the pandemic and the recession are part of our daily reality, we've taken a step back and have asked some new questions, and in particular try to get some new feedback on what TBR can do to best serve workforce, industry needs, our students, our families across Tennessee. The steering committee has met a few times. Kenyatta is a member of that steering committee, and we have begun to see the outlines of a couple of ideas that we think might animate our revised strategic plan. At its core, and this is in the documents that we sent out that perhaps you've had a chance to go through, but at its core, TBR is an open access system, whereby we take everyone, regardless of circumstance, background, preparation, geography, demographics. We will do our best to train and educate you, regardless of those circumstances. And we're also, of course, intensely focused on completion and equity and connections to the workforce. As the Chancellor said, those are the essence of our mission. As that steering committee has met, again, we've identified some broad ideas that we think will provide that strategic direction for us. Again, we listed some of those in that document, things like focusing on completion, having an impact on the community and on the lives of Tennesseans, still being a very collaborative and innovative system. But again, those are ideas we want to kind of just test out with y'all and see how this group has had experiences with TBR, what issues that you think we ought to be focusing on more that we've not in the past, where our attention ought to be over the next 5 years. So with that as background, I as Chancellor said, I guess just want to start with, from this group's perspective, what are the things, the one or two things that TBR ought to be stressing and doing more of, perhaps that we're not now, that would really help cement the connections between the training and educations that we do and workforce needs? What could TBR be doing more of? Where should our focus be?
So I think the best way to do this is if you have a comment or input for us, if you'll just acknowledge, you can unmute and start talking. You can chat and we'll call on you, whichever you think is the best way. Does that sound right, Russ?
It does, yes. Perfect. Thanks, Tim.
Chairman Marshall Graves, may I ask a question, please?
Certainly, go ahead.
So I think when you talk about ways you could respond, we've been seeing in innovation earlier today, some of the things that are going on in the local areas. And I think there are some really interesting, probably emerging best practices around education. And I think just from our position in Innovation Committee in terms of sort of looking for those best practices, I think it would be really interesting for you to take a look at maybe, across some of the regions at some of the best practices that are emerging around your area, and maybe there's some places where you could partner and sort of try to prove out some best practices that we could explore more statewide. Thank you.
Sure. Marshall, can I follow up with you on that? And for you, for anyone, I'm curious from this group's perspective, what are some of those effective things that we could potentially scale up? We have sometimes a perspective about what might be working or not, but I'm curious if this group has a perspective on what's working either locally or regionally that we could push further and scale further.
I think our directors are going to know. About things that are especially happening in the context of the current environment that may be new or emerging.
This is Kenyatta, and hey, I don't want to take too much time in this conversation, but I'll ask Nikisha from our programs aspect, if that's okay, Marshall, to sort of talk about some things that she's seen that's been very innovative and useful as a best practice, and also would probably plug in Ann Thompson, given that we do have a lot of interactions with ECD on innovation across the state as well that may be useful.
Hey, good morning, everyone. From a partnering perspective, we've seen some innovative partnerships in some of the areas of the state where with TBR, as far as sharing a space and becoming an extension to the American Job Center, meeting the participants where they are, rather than having an adult learner come to a brick and mortar, right, to meet those unmet needs. We're meeting them in their environment that they're most comfortable with, as far as through the Office of Student Success. And so that's some of the innovations that we have across, and then also some of the advisory councils that we've been invited to participate on with THEC and TBR, looking at how to provide support through a multi-agency approach for low-income students and those wraparound services, with the understanding that tuition is not enough.
Mayor, did you have a question? Okay, Ann, do you have a comment? And then we'll go to Tony for another question after your comment.
Sure. Sorry, we have an echo going. It's not on my end. Is everybody else muted?
Yeah.
Perfect. There it goes. Thank you, whoever fixed that. Maybe something that would be helpful to discuss is just the advances in technology. So ever since we announced the GM expansion and how they're moving over to electric vehicles, that's going to bring a tremendous amount of advanced manufacturing, electric vehicle batteries, things of that nature into our state. So maybe that's a space where TBR could really help work with us as we're trying to recruit those companies into Tennessee, understanding what that advanced technology is and how we can get some of these individuals who are currently in positions that aren't coming back. So a lot of those, restaurants, tourism, things of that nature where we know that COVID has changed that landscape. How can we get them upskilled in order to take those jobs as well? So that's what I would add from ECD's perspective.
Thanks, Ann.
Tony, why don't you go ahead and give your question, and then we'll go back to the mayor for his question.
Thanks. Yes, and I appreciate you joining us, Chancellor. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Career in a Year initiative that I know TBR had put a lot of work into prior to the pandemic, and just how you see that perhaps evolving or being an additional opportunity for success as we move into our workforce reconnect strategy.
Chancellor, I'll be happy to start, and obviously we'll defer to you. But Tony, it's a good question, and I think it's almost more important now. And I think this group knows, but the idea was that TBR did a lot of outreach and advertising about the various programs and careers that can be pursued, basically within a year, and stressing the intense and short-term training that many of our programs have that allow a student to get in and get out and get ready in a career pretty fast. And I think we've seen some success there. It's probably, again, more important now as people are not only primed to go back to higher ed through the recession, but are doing so under some more difficult, just family and life circumstances. I mean, I've got 3 kids downstairs learning right now on remote learning, and so for a typical student, that's an important thing to be able to get back in the classroom and find a way to get a career done, to get a program done in a very focused amount of time to get back into the industry workforce. So I think, Tony, it's worked well, and if anything, it's probably more important in this environment.
Mayor, go ahead if you're ready with your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chancellor, thank you for being here with your team. I'm just wondering how we are measuring our high school graduates coming in that are needing to take the courses to go back and rebuild some skill sets. With our Tennessee Promise, we've got a 2-year curriculum, but it's looking like closer to 2.5 or 3 for a whole lot of students. And I know that has to do with our K-12 system getting them ready too, but are there any trends that you're noticing with the volume of students that have to take some remedial classes before they can get in the meat of the curriculum?
Yes, and thank you, Mayor, for asking that question. We definitely have been working diligently over the past several years to try and streamline getting people into their program of study rather than having to take developmental courses when they come to the college. With the sales program, which I don't know if you were familiar with that, but students can actually begin taking their developmental courses while they're still in high school once they have taken the ACT and they fall into that category. We've been having extremely good success with our math in sales, that people that take that, 97% of them come out ready to go into their math in the college. We are also looking at doing more of a competency-based developmental program so that you don't have to take all of it. If you're only needing to be shored up in certain areas, we can alter that time to destination, so to speak, so that you can complete much quicker than what you had been able to do in the past. And if you don't mind, I'd like to jump back for just a minute. I was on mute and I didn't realize that I was trying to give further update to Tony to the question that you asked. Right now, we do have 60 programs of study that you can complete in under a year at our technical colleges and community colleges. Those lead directly to the field of work, to employment in an area that is in high demand, was in high demand pre-pandemic, and is still in high demand. We're very excited to still be able to offer those, but one thing that we're going to be diligently working on between now and over the next 18 months is to deliver those in a more of a hybrid format. We now know that we've had great success in going online with much of the theory parts of our program of study. Was hearing from students just this morning what a difference that was making in their ability to work while they were going to college. Now, if they get called in for a different shift, the faculty member has recorded that lecture for them and they don't have to be sitting in front of the computer during that time. So no longer do they have to drop out of their programs of study. And so these are the kinds of things that we're trying to shift going forward, knowing that in a new environment, we can look a little different. So thank you for both of those questions.
Let me ask, for any of you, when asking for input from this board, are there things, I'll ask it's a two-part question. Are there things that as a board of regents, you think you're doing well? And would you like to tout those? And then maybe the board can respond to say, yeah, we agree, or you think that, but maybe not so much. And then are there things that you think are your struggles? And then maybe our board can react to say, that's really not a problem for us, move on to another one, or maybe we can address another struggle that maybe some of the local boards are having or experiencing.
And Russ, I'll take a beginning stab at this, but I'd like both your and Wendy's thoughts on this. I think that some of the things that we are struggling with at the moment is the ability to get students into our programs of study. I hope that as we continue with our partnerships, we are seeing those things improve, but we still have a difficulty in getting students actually to campus, getting them enrolled, getting them into the right programs in order to completely meet workforce demand. Obviously, we are not totally meeting it. There is still a gap between what we're training for and what is needed in the field. And as we continue to struggle with how do we make sure that we're meeting that demand, that's where we rely so heavily on your input. Just as Ann mentioned, making sure that we're doing the training for the new technology, for the advanced technology, and that the curriculum is not dated in any form or fashion.
Do you think let me ask, do you think that's an awareness and a marketing issue that you're not getting enough students? Or do you think no, they all know about it, they just are struggling with the bridge to get them from knowing about it to getting into it?
Yes, all of the above. I think that it is a marketing issue. I think it is an awareness. Again, one of the things we've been probing with the students that we do have is, how did you know we were here? How did you find out about us? What propelled you to begin with us in high school? How did you find out about dual enrollment? And the answers vary. For the majority of them, though, I would say it was someone told me about what you were doing. I had somebody in high school that told me this was a good thing to do. So those partnerships are very key for us, working with our K-12 partners so that there is someone saying to the students, this is a good thing for you to go and do. It was noted to us this morning that there is still a transportation issue in our rural counties. Not so much in urban, but in rural counties, if people do not have viable transportation, it makes it much more difficult for them to get to one of our campuses. And looking forward into the future, we are hoping that this hybrid format will help resolve some of those issues. The governor's announcement yesterday on the partnership with labor and with ECD and what we're doing to try and contact those individuals that are currently on assistance, I hope is going to make a big difference in the number of people that we're able to reach out to. And so Russ, Wendy, if y'all have additional comments, I know y'all have some thoughts on that as well.
Chancellor, my thoughts roughly mirrored your own. I do feel like TBR, particularly with our technical programs, our TCATs, are in tune with what that local and regional economy needs. And it seems like the communications back and forth flow well, and that they're able to react when there is a change in the labor market that necessitates TCATs going in a different direction. On the things that we struggle with, the Chancellor mentioned a few that I agree with completely, of course. Costs beyond the, tuition costs are get a lot of the attention, Promise and Reconnect, but there are costs beyond that our students struggle with, that we struggle with how to address. Transportation's one. We're trying to make progress on book costs by getting electronic books for students more. And we still have an issue with just retention of the high school graduates who come as freshmen to our colleges, many of whom it takes a while to find a direction and to find their program of study that really connects with them. And we still lose quite a few of them after that first year, in spite of a lot of attention we paid to that issue over the years. So there's a few comments on both the positive and the negative side.
And just to go a little bit further on that, when we look at increasing enrollment, specifically in the technical programs, we look not just at the college level, but we go down to the program level. And we have the benefit of lots of data and the ability to disaggregate that data. So we look at issues such as whether there's gender diversity in some of our high wage earning programs. But then we have to realize that as we market and recruit for those programs, a lot of those high wage programs require a lot of expensive equipment. And, so we're dealing with increasing enrollment so that we can increase the number of people who have the capacity to get the high wage earning technical jobs. But a lot of those efforts require partnerships with high schools. For the students who are coming out of high school, we want people to tell the female students that they can go into welding, advanced manufacturing. So we are really working really hard to figure out who's not in our programs, who needs to be in our programs, and how we can build those programs so that the students can come, finish, and go out and get those high wage earning jobs.
Chairman Barry, if I may.
Please.
I do want to make a point. Good to see you, Chancellor. That also, on our side, we need to help TBR to do their job. So, and the information that we've given about the unemployed or recently unemployed individuals is part of our giving them the information they need to do what they're setting about to do, and making those connections and making somebody knows of the opportunity that's there for them to develop their skills. And the same thing with adult education information, which we hadn't done in the past and we've started to now, so that somebody who finishes completes the high set exam or is almost ready to complete gets the same sort of treatment that a high school senior would get. And just making those connections to TBR and to those programs, again, is just kind of giving TBR the information that they need to do their jobs. I think that is maybe it shouldn't be a brave new frontier, but it certainly is now. And hopefully, even if we get a percentage of those very large numbers, we'll start seeing a pipeline get developed from those efforts as well.
Absolutely.
Chancellor Tidings and TBR staff, I want to thank you for the increase in the technology curriculum that is in our rural areas. It's really problems, industries and employers, and having skilled, trained employees in these rural areas that we haven't seen before. I just want to thank you for that. I think it's a real plus for our whole state.
Christine, thank you, but also thank you for what you're doing in your county for us. You've been a tremendous supporter and a great help. So thank you.
Well,
I have a question.
I'm
sorry.
You just really can't believe how much support we receive. You all there is from the whole business community and everyone. So we're excited about what's going on. TCAT is Ms. Monks is doing a
Thank you.
I have a question for Dr. Denton. This is Ron Wade in Memphis. We have a collaborative between TCAT, the University of Memphis, the Shelby County Division of Corrections, and the collaborative is based on a program called Hope to Hire. It's a privately funded program that's had great success inside correction facility. Since COVID came, it's been about 8 months where that in-house instruction hasn't been available. But because of Governor Lee's initiative with the 10 Care, we've been able to put together 100 laptops that we're in the process of beginning to provide the same instruction, although not live. Instruction will be about 3 hours, where it's about half that instruction time. So my question, Dr. Denton and your team, would be, are there other best practices, successful programs really throughout the country that have utilized technology, particularly on a training part for the instructors? TCAT, University of Memphis, are pretty skilled at doing that, but we have also instructors, mentors that put a lot of bells and whistles, if you would say, to the offering. Just wondering if there's any additional type of resources, best practices, in other words, how to get this instruction in the best possible manner.
Mr. Wade, it's a good question, and we put a lot of attention on trying to get our faculty trained to deliver instruction in an online environment. One of the things we did last spring, and we're doing again this fall, is we asked all of our faculty what their experience has been. What did they need from us? What did they need from a technological standpoint, from a pedagogical standpoint? What resources do they need? And trying to then connect them with resources that we have, resources that are offered through some of our partners, and honestly with each other. We've got a lot of faculty across our system who are really good teaching in an online environment and have been for a while, and connecting them with their counterparts in their discipline and across the college has been a really effective tool for us. We're not where we need to be yet, but I feel like overall our faculty are much more comfortable in teaching online than they have been, and we have resources all the time trying to get them more prepared to do that.
Are those resources that you can share from that we could access on a local basis in terms of, how to do well in
They are. They're on our website, available to all. I will gladly share them with this group. And some of them are webinars, some of them are written resources, some of them are training opportunities. We'd be happy to share those. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, have we answered some of the questions you were hoping to glean from the conversation, or are there other specific things you'd like to ask while you have us handy?
Mr. Chairman, I think this has been a very helpful discussion. We obviously value this partnership, and again, I really appreciate Kenyatta representing the Department of Labor on our steering committee. We would like to, if it's okay, continue to communicate with this group about the direction that our strategic plan is taking, and again, to get feedback as we need on the ideas we're thinking about and the strategic direction that our plan takes the next 5 years. And so, Chancellor, I'll defer to you, but I appreciate the time today, and if you don't mind, we'd like to continue the conversation and keep you updated as we unfold this process over the next 6 months.
I just concur. Thank you very much for allowing us this time today to gather feedback from you. We consider you a vital partner in the work that we're doing, and we just appreciate the partnership so much.
And Mr. Chairman, I see Denise's comment. By the way, hello, Denise. Good to see you, and I'll be happy to do whatever we can to ensure that ongoing conversation with folks on this group and at Department of Labor. Absolutely.
Yeah, so if others on the board have input that you would like to give to the Board of Regents, I know they would welcome that. Should they do that to one particular contact, who would you recommend they submit any questions or comments or input to?
Chancellor, I'll happily be the contact if you'd like, and you can funnel those directly to me. I can provide my contact information, or again, always through Dr. Lovett as well, who again is on our steering committee. But yeah, please reach out to me directly, and happy to engage you.
That's great. And then if you, obviously you know who we are, and if you want to reach out to any individual here, maybe particularly those who represent local boards, you can go through Kenyatta, and then he can reach out to individuals necessary. Does that sound right?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So if you have further questions, just please send those to Russ. Russ, if you're looking at the chat feature now, perhaps you can put your contact information in that to everyone. And then if they have other specific questions for follow-up for your group, they can send those directly to you. Well, thank you for your
Absolutely.
time. Yeah, thank you for your time and willingness to be asked questions and to try to overcome some of the struggles that you're trying to improve. So thank you for your willingness to hear our feedback, not just today, but ongoing.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Before we move on to local plan approvals, I want to go back to Assistant Commissioner Phelps. And Ben Ferguson had a question regarding unemployment. And so the question is that with significant increase in claims, Rusty, if you're still with us, do you anticipate a surcharge on the unemployment rates for employers similar to what was implemented after we had the recession in 2008?
Chairman, let me take that one for Rusty.
Yeah.
So great question, Ann. I think one of the things that we did in Tennessee very quickly is begin using the coronavirus relief funds to support the trust fund, unemployment insurance trust fund. And because of that, we are still at a level that's above $1 billion, and we'll be at that level at the end of the year. And so we'll still be, as we round at December into January, at the lowest tax rate, employer tax rate for employers for unemployment insurance. So all that to say is that doesn't look likely because of some actions that we were able to take very early on. I will say, for context, many states are not in that same category. For they did not use those funds. So, for example, we are on phone calls with many states who lost 96% of their trust fund value. And they are also borrowing money from the federal government. And there's really only one way to make that up, and that's through additional taxes or surcharges on employers. So all that to say, we're in pretty good shape. Our thought process there was it doesn't make sense to tax employers when what we really want them to do is hire people. And we should not make it more expensive to hire people if that's what we want them to do. So early on, I think we were either the second or first state that made that call. So I think we're in a good spot with that particular question. And if Ann has any direct questions, Chairman, let me know, and I'll be happy to answer that as well.
Understood. Thank you. Okay, moving on. We have some local plan approvals that are going to require some votes. And this is kind of a carryover from our last meeting where we had some follow-ups that the local boards needed to achieve to be in compliance. And so Assistant Commissioner Lovett, I think you're going to lead us through these. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And thank you, Chairman Barry, and hello again to the entire board. Just a recap from the August 28th board meeting where this board approved the 3 regional plans that were presented to the board and 5 of the 9 local plans fully approved by this board on August 28th. There were, however, 4 outstanding that were approved with conditions, and the charge from the board was to go back, allow our unit to provide some technical assistance to those 4 local workforce boards to come back and present to this board during this meeting their plans, which we find acceptable and ready for approval. So technical assistance was provided since that August 28th meeting. And in October, we kind of finalized and solidified everything. And so now I'm going to hand it over to James Robinson from our team to walk you through those 4 local workforce boards, their presentations, their plans that we believe right now are sufficient for approval so that all 9 workforce boards, in addition to the 3 regional plans, will be approved in a timely manner. So James, I'll hand it over to you, and thank you again, Chairman Barry.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay, Chairman Barry?
Yes, sounded good, James.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah, just want to give you some high-level overviews of the 4 remaining areas. Greater Memphis, Southwest, Northern Middle, and Southern Middle. And first, some overall comments. The board has been presented with some one-page documents that have been provided for each of the 4 local plans that received approval with conditions. And as mentioned before from Dr. Lovett, the state followed up with 4 local areas requesting an update of the meeting of the conditions as well as for any need of technical assistance that was required. As stated, all 4 areas have met their conditions. Technical assistance has been requested by 2 of the 4 areas due to changes in staff and or our service providers being re-procured. And I'll address each of the TAs as I go over each local plan separately. Again, a high-level overview. So starting with Greater Memphis. Greater Memphis had 5 conditions to be approved upon to include the areas of operational systems and strategies, as well as technical requirements and assurance, which included some provision providing the detailed budgets to support contracts and forms to support their expenditures. Each of these conditions have been met by Greater Memphis and updated in their language and their plan and the required submission of the forms. So Greater Memphis did not request any technical assistance. However, the state is going to be providing Greater Memphis a regional technical assistance session in the first quarter of 2021 to address improvement of youth service delivery strategies and best practices occurring in West Tennessee. Also, Greater Memphis will, along with other local boards and regional councils, they will submit a quarterly update report to the State Workforce Board in March, reflecting progress and or changes that have been they faced in meeting these goals and objectives that they laid out in the plans. With that stated, I think we would just start with asking the board to consider the state's recommendation that Greater Memphis Area Local Plan be fully approved with no remaining conditions.
Okay, so for a vote and approval, does anyone through chat want to make a motion that we accept the changes and updates to the plan for Greater Memphis? All right, Jason Bates has made the motion and Michelle Falcone has seconded. All right, and so We need to, the only abstention that I know we need to ask for is Ron Wade in that area. And then there's a couple of folks who are new to the board who haven't quite finished their paperwork, and we're going to make assumed abstentions on those folks. Otherwise, are there any oppositions, further discussion, or additional abstentions? Do so by chat. Seeing no further abstentions, opposition, or discussion, we will say that that plan has been approved. All right, James, who's next?
Okay, we will go next to Southwest Local Workforce Board. Southwest Board had 9 conditions to be approved upon. That was in the areas of operational systems and strategies. And also want to recognize the new director, Tracy Bunch, who has come on to as the director for Southwest. So we'll be working with her and the staff to ensure that we give her some follow-up TA, although they had not requested TA. But some of the areas they needed to address in their plan were in the coordination services in the one-stop service center, in addition to some other programmatic areas such as the assessment of the Title I dislocated work and adult programs, the assessment of the youth, and the out-of-school youth service strategies. Each of the conditions have been met based on updated language in the plan. And as mentioned, Southwest has not requested technical assistance. However, we will include them in that regional planning and technical assistance session in the first quarter of 2021 to address those youth service delivery strategies. Southwest will also submit a quarterly update report to the State Workforce Board in March of 2021, reflecting progress and challenges faced in meeting their goals and objectives laid out in the plan. With that stated, the state would like to ask that the board approve the state's recommendation that the Southwest Area Local Plan be approved with no remaining conditions.
Okay, and so from Southwest, we have Ben Ferguson abstaining, just based on his association with that region. And just for clarification, the new director is Vicki Bunch. So just to make sure.
Yes.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Yep. All right. So do I have a motion to accept the Southwest plan with the improvements recognized as presented? All right, Marshall Graves makes a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Second from Jay Baker. Any further discussion on the plan improvements? All right, I will assume everyone is ready to approve unless I see further abstentions or opposition. Seeing and hearing none, we will say that that plan is approved as presented. Okay. James?
Okay, thank you. Our next local area is the northern middle area that has 4 conditions to be improved in the areas of operational systems and strategy, mainly in the assessment of youth activities and meeting requirements of the in-school youth waiver and the development of career pathways. Each of the conditions, the 4 conditions, have been met based on updated language in the plan and follow-up assistance with Marla. The Northern Middle has requested technical assistance mainly as they have contracted 2 new youth providers, and that is EDSI and Metropolitan Action Commission. We will be having that technical assistance in mid-December to prepare them for the January 1st start date for the new contractors, which will include the Mid-Cumberland Human Resource Agency as a one-stop operator. And the state will be the ones to provide an overview to the new contractors and highlight state policy, which impacts programs, WIA performance measures, to include the key performance indicators. Northern Middle will also be a part of the technical assistance training to the new contractors in the OSO, providing detailed training on local operations and BOSS requirements. Northern Middle, as the other 2 mentioned areas, will also submit a quarterly report to the State Workforce Board in March 2021, reflecting their progress and challenges that have in meeting those goals and objectives laid out in their plan. With that, the State Workforce staff would like to request the State Workforce Board's approval of the state's recommendation that the Northern Middle Area local plan be fully approved with no conditions.
Thank you, James. Looks like I have a motion from Ben Ferguson to approve that as presented. Do I have a second? Second from Mayor Brooks, I believe. All right, any further discussion or abstentions or opposition? Seeing and hearing none, we will say that the plan for Northern Middle is approved as presented. And one more, I think, James.
That will be it. Southern Middle Local Workforce Board had 8 conditions to be approved upon in the area of operational systems and strategies. And that included some of the programmatic areas to be addressed in the coordination of services among partners, specifically those in the rural areas, the review of Title II adult education applications by the local board, and meeting the out-of-school youth waiver requirement. Each of these has been addressed. Are these conditions, they've been met based on the updated language that they have submitted in the plan. Southern Middle has requested technical assistance on improved business services once their staff has been hired that will be addressing business services. In addition to the TA that will be provided to business service staff, the business services team of the American Job Center will be included in the technical assistance to be provided to ensure coordination and delivery of business services is consistent. Southern Middle will also submit a quarterly update report to the State Workforce Board in March as well to address their progresses and challenges made that are laid out in the plan. With that, the State Workforce staff would like the board to make the approval of the recommendation that Southern Middle Area local plan be fully approved with no remaining conditions.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? It looks like Mayor Brooks makes a motion to approve, and Marshall Graves has a second for approval of that plan. Christine Hopkins will ask you to abstain from that particular region just because your association with that. Any other abstentions or opposition or further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, we will say that that plan is also approved. So thank you, James, to your team for reviewing those for us. For new board members, this is one of the important functions of our board's oversight, is just to make sure that these local plans are in compliance. And it's not because we're just trying to be, grumpy and nitpicky. It's because our job, our focus is to make sure that they're good stewards of the resources that are provided to them, and just really appreciate Dr. Lovett and everybody on his team who reviews these, make sure the compliance is there, make sure they're meeting the standards and expectations, because that makes it a lot easier for us to understand all those details when it comes time for our review. So thank you, everybody on that team who's done that, and thank you to the local boards for getting those plans in compliance so quickly and getting ready to go. So it looks like we're ready to move and provide the resources needed. So thanks. Okay, we have a couple of policies coming out of the committees that met earlier this morning. And let's start with the operations committee. Stuart, do you want to tell us what went on in your breakout session?
Sure, thank you. We had a great meeting this morning. We received an update on the Migrant Seasonal Farm Worker Federal Monitoring Report and the WIOA Youth Federal Monitoring Report. Carla Garrett gave us a high overview of both reports' findings and the observations, and she's also going to map out the state's response to the report and update the board on actions taken and current status of findings. On the Migrant Seasonal Farm Worker Federal Monitoring Report, there were 6 findings with 3 areas of concern and 1 promising practice. And on the youth, the WIOA Youth Federal Monitoring Report update, there were 15 findings with 13 being resolved, and we have 2 remaining. One's resolved with the monitoring policy, which we'll discuss in a moment, and 1 is around parent-youth involvement. 2 of the policies are directly related to this, the monitoring and data validation, and we'll also have a grievance and complaint policy to review. I'll go ahead and wrap up the update of the meeting, though, and we'll come back to that if it's okay. Nikisha Ricks gave us a great update on workforce program updates. Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development has partnered with 3 umbrella organizations and entities to provide reemployment services across the state. We're also updated on the adult learner enrollment impact of COVID on TBR campuses, despite Tennessee Reconnect. We targeted approximately 1,000 students who were impacted by COVID by providing tuition assistance and wraparound supports. Total participants served 1,230 by December 31st. We also received an award from Office of Criminal Justice Program to procure a consultant to assist with employer engagement across the state for justice-involved individuals to develop a sustainability plan addressing private public engagements and commitments. The SNAP program has been awarded a data grant to begin implementing and developing some of the processes and objectives from the 2019 State Workforce Development Board strategy session, such as data transparency, data synthesis, and system alignment. And on that note, SNAP exceeded the state's new enrollment KPI projections by 156% for the 3rd calendar year quarter, July through September. And it was noted just the responsiveness particularly around SNAP as it relates to COVID. We had some good discussion around COVID and the fact that it is a reality we need to consider, particularly as we look at programs and program implementations. We need to give consideration to the effect of COVID on the timing of those implementations and whether or not we can bring the proper resourcing to bear. And so that's on the forefront of everyone's mind. We do have 3 policies that we have reviewed and with no exceptions and are forwarding to the board for approval. The first is the monitoring policy. Just a moment. The notable guidelines conveyed within this policy. It establishes the requirement for quarterly monitoring submissions by the local workforce development boards to include an update on regional and local plans. It details the use of quarterly monitoring submissions and monitoring efforts to include corrective action and technical assistance. And it establishes annual program monitoring along with already established annual financial monitoring. So this new policy is in response to federal guidelines, and it is an added layer of accountability that will result in quarterly reporting to the board around compliance on the areas that are detailed in the policy. So Chairman, will we go through all of them and then?
Yeah, if it's okay, let's hear the recommendations from each of the policies, and then we'll make one vote for all three, if that's okay.
Very well. The second policy is the data validation policy. Likewise, a result of the review that I commented on earlier. The guidelines, this establishes the local and state requirements for quarterly and annual data validation. It establishes random sampling methodology and identifies how records will be documented and maintained. The local workforce development boards, in order to meet the requirements of this policy, must conduct data validation on a quarterly and annually basis and participate in annual training and respond timely to any corrective action needs. Again, there were no exceptions taken to the policy on the part of the committee. And then the final, the grievance policy. This policy differentiates complaints as they relate to 4 separate categories. Complaints alleging discrimination or denial of equal opportunity, complaints alleging unjust denial of WIOA services, complaints alleging hostile work environment against employers that are not related to WIOA funded programs or training, and complaints made by staff within the LWDA against other LWDA staff or sub-recipient entities. Notable guidelines conveyed in the policy. It also defines the process to receive, process, follow up on complaints within the migrant, seasonal farm worker, and American Job Center complaint laws. So those 3 new policies, again, are forwarded to the board for approval with no exceptions.
Thank you. Any questions for Stuart or the folks on the operations committee? Okay, hearing none, let me ask for a motion to approve those policies as presented by that committee. All right, Greg Persinger makes the motion, and it looks like Michelle Falcone has a second. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I will assume that everyone is going to approve unless I now hear of abstentions or opposition. And seeing and hearing none, we will say that those policies have been approved. So thank you, Stuart, and everybody on your team. Glad it was a productive meeting. I appreciate that report and your diligence in getting those policies updated.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, Kevin Vaughn, what happened in your innovation committee this morning?
A couple of good this morning also. Ms. McDonald gave us an update on virtual American Job Centers, how they were open and could be accessed 24/7, 365. It shows the interest of what they might be interested in, how they could browse through the wizard to see other services, and if they did find something that they were interested in and needed other help, they could schedule where they could come in and get some help one-on-one. Also, we had Holt from the Southeast give us her best practices. She told us about a boot camp and the success rate of that. She also spoke about a recovery ecosystem. And also introduced another welding apprenticeship program through policy that will forward to give us a apprenticeship update. Apprenticeship program 13 this year. And we found out several apprenticeship programs policy that we're going to bring to the board is that program to an employer, meaning the program we're going to show their program and what the changing their thinking, and then show how that links to an employer. That's what we're going to bring to the board.
Kevin, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you. You're breaking up just a little bit. Are you ready for to discuss the pre-apprenticeship vote and the update of that policy?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So are there any questions for Kevin or Vice Chair Marshall Graves? Maybe for some clarity, I think Kevin's internet connection might be just a little unstable.
We did have a for apprenticeship. We do have something that needs a vote, Chairman.
Right, and I'm pretty sure Kevin explained that. Were there any points of that policy that you can explain on behalf of the committee?
Tyra's on the line. She's pretty articulate. Maybe she could take up for Kevin's.
Sure, I'll be glad to.
Yes, thank you.
So the pre-apprenticeship policy that was presented really mirrors the legislation around what qualifies as a pre-apprenticeship. The reason it's coming before the board for approval is there are several training providers that are advertising that their program is a pre-apprenticeship. However, it does not have a direct line to an employment status. And so what we would like to do as state is make that pre-apprenticeship policy or pre-apprenticeship program creditable, meaning that we would verify that it's meeting the requirements of a pre-apprenticeship that sets in legislation, and that we would then promote the tie to an employment. So with an apprenticeship program, you have to be employed. So we get calls all the time from individuals asking, how do you sign me up for an apprenticeship program? And so we can't ask an employer to hire an individual, but we can help direct them to a pre-apprenticeship program that has a direct tie with that employer. And so that's what we're wanting to do with the pre-apprenticeship policy is legitimize the program with that direct tie, that it is a credentialed program, meaning that they have an education platform that aligns with a job.
Thank you. Good summary. Any questions for Tyra or the Innovation Committee? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to approve the policy as presented to us from the Innovation Committee this morning. Have a motion from Commissioner McCord, and I'll say that it's a second from Vonda McDaniel. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will assume that everyone approves this policy unless I hear of any further abstentions or opposition.
Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
This is Ronnie, and I'm sorry, I was struggling with my technology.
That's
But
fine. Go ahead.
I did just want to say in discussion how important this is from the employer perspective, building that pipeline. So being able to credential the pre-apprenticeship process will help out a lot. So thank you.
I couldn't agree more. I appreciate you saying that so that everyone hears. It's building that pipeline that feeds into the apprenticeship program, which, as Tyra presented to the Innovation Committee, is just growing at a much faster rate than we even anticipated. So to have this pre-apprenticeship that can feed into that makes it even better. Still seeing no opposition or abstention, we will say that that policy has passed. And thank you, Tyra, and the innovation team for working through that this morning. And we don't have, I'm going to make up my own agenda item here. We don't have a policy approval from the other committee, but Ann, do you have any report from your committee meeting this morning? I may have put you on the spot. That's okay. All right, so I'm the only thing standing between you guys and a break right now. So let's take about 10 minutes. Don't log off, just, mute and pause. And we'll see you back here at about 11:17 Central Time. Okay, hope everyone's had a chance to stretch a little bit and refill coffee or get a quick snack to keep your tummy from rumbling. And if we're ready for the next part of our meeting, we'll have Ivan Greenfield give us a fiscal update. Ivan, are you ready for us?
Yes, good morning, Chairman. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yeah, you sound fine.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my content here. And hopefully everyone can see the PowerPoint okay there. Good morning. I guess good morning to some, good afternoon to others. I'll just try to make this fiscal review as painless as possible. So we'll kind of start with just looking at some of the funding balances, expenditures, some key performance metrics, both from a state and federal perspective, and then do some report out on funding specific to pandemic relief, and then kind of wrap up with a look ahead. So first, a couple of notable challenges and observations. As most of you know, earlier this year, we kind of shifted massive transition from working in the office to working at home, not just state staff, but workforce partners alike. It just continues to be a huge effort in managing infrastructure and communication, things of that nature. With the continuing spikes in COVID, resulting in AJC closures, just growing concerns around the health and well-being of our people. And then just the, we've said this before, the impact of low expenditures on future funding. I know that this is really happening at a macro level, but it's still some uncertainty around what the impact of low expenditures will have on our future federal allocations. And then, as you've heard already, this massive reemployment wave, if you will, just kind of forming off the horizon, just shoring up and hoping to have the infrastructure to be able to have a preemptive approach in our outreach and, to say embracing technology, which has already been talked about, and just how we synthesize data to help identify the most vulnerable, to include employers and job seekers alike. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at the numbers. And just for the benefit of some of our newer board members, I'll just kind of go through the makeup of this statement. Basically, it's in 3 parts. All the figures presented are as of June 30th, 2020. And when you get the 3 parts, it's just basically a funding section, cost, and then net positions. Funding represents, if you will, our major programs in 2 main categories: our formula grants, which are recurring allocations, and then discretionary, which is a competitively procured funding. The cost section is just programs and program administration, and then grants and subsidies, which represent our contracted services or external costs. And then net position is just basically the authorized funding less those operational costs. So just to note that at the end of this slide deck are additional attachments to include a list of authorized funding by program. So we'll continue here. Kind of spoke about these, but basically these observations that the funding was not really impacted by our fourth quarter reporting, and so it's kind of remained the same. You see that overall, basically our funding has been down year over year, and that's basically those funds the funding authorizations are based on county allocation methodologies that are overall related to some sort of unemployment or low income. And so for Tennessee, those numbers have been, prior to the pandemic, which we're kind of looking at, have been kind of low. And so our funding has taken a hit as a result of that. Looking at net cost, you'll see that there was a significant increase in fourth quarter due to about $21 million increase, up from $60 million in third quarter to just under $81.8 million. The overall cost allocations percentage-wise kind of remain the same, with 1/3 of those costs, or in this case, $27 million, going towards administration of our programs, and 2/3, or $54.6 million, towards our contracted services. And then, year over year is kind of the same, relatively the same, cost relatively flat. Then you're seeing between overall program up slightly, about 2%, and then our contracted services down about 2%. Also included at the end of this, you could see, if you like, there's an attachment that shows these line item costs at the end, of the slide deck. Next slide. We're looking at, kind of the next couple of slides will speak to costs by program, with emphasis on Title I costs, adult, youth, dislocated worker. And so here, this chart basically shows that of our $54 million that we had in reimbursements, 82%, or just under $45 million of that, went to our contracted services. You'll see that of those costs, $38.6 million went to Title I program costs, and then participant costs versus other cost programs are kind of identified on this slide, where you'll see that 18% of the contracted costs, that $38 million, 18% were in participant costs, and those costs have been down year over year. You see that most significantly about 23%. Now, there's an adjustment there to be made between the OSO and program costs, OSO and service provider costs, where we had a misclassification of costs. We're working with the local area to get that corrected. So that 46.5% will be more like less than 10%. And so you can see that from this, that total participant costs are down significantly. So this next slide looks at that participant cost and kind of breaks it out by services. And you'll see there too that when you just look at the service types, most of those are significantly, as far as the percentage change, significantly down. So again, participant costs are down at 23% year over year, which is expected given the pandemic and AJC closures. So now we kind of shift from expenditures to some performance metrics, and for this slide, there's additional information, more specificity, and attachments at the end of this slide deck. But what we're seeing here is that from a federal perspective, we've met, from a state, we've met our overall federal measures, federal core performance measures, I should say, and we exceeded those target goals in all but the one bucket there where you see dislocated worker credential attainment. We did, under the guidance, we are required to meet 90% of those targets. And so in that one, we did meet the target by exceeding that threshold. Again, for the actual rates, I would encourage you to just kind of go to that, the slides 3 and 4 at the end of the slide deck. Continuing on, looking at some of the state measures, more specifically, right now we're still developing KPIs, and so this measure is just limited to the number of new enrollments, and these are based on calendar year. And so what you see that is in the second quarter, enrollments were down. I mean, given that participant costs were down, enrollment costs were down, AJCs were closed, and so we can see that correlation very easily. But also we see that looking ahead at third quarter, that they're starting to see some rebound in the enrollments, which is encouraging. You'll note that these green highlighted areas here to show that those actual enrollments for that period exceeded again, another 90% threshold, which is encouraging to see the numbers rebounding. Next slide. So looking at some key utilization rates, kind of discussed these a little bit in our oversight committee. These are fiscal in nature. We talked about before minimum participant cost rates to state guidance that, state policy that local areas should be expending at least 40% of their programmatic costs on direct participant costs. And so you see here that 2 of the 9 areas are meeting that. Another utilization rate is the potential recapture, which basically looks at obligation and expenditure rates on first-year contracts should be in excess at 80% or more for that minimum requirement. And you see that there are several areas, 4 areas not currently at that rate through June 30th of 2020. However, it's important to note that back in June, the board did vote and approve hold harmless on both of these rates. But again, just looking at this to see where we are is a good indicator of fund utilizations. The other measures are just more compliance related and look at expenditure thresholds specific to youth. Continuing, we'll move to just some additional funding specific to pandemic or COVID CARES Act relief funds. We have 2 initiatives currently running. The first is agency specific, received as part of the state's receipt of the $2 billion of that. The agency received $9.5 million. That 9.5 is supporting 3 main initiatives, if you will. Reemployment, which kind of talked about, which is more participant specific and aimed at getting individuals back to work as quickly as possible. The career and training is more employer specific, which looks at enhanced skills enhancements such as incumbent worker or apprenticeship or OJT type trainings. And then the virtual AJCs expanding our virtual footprint and creating greater access to services and outreach and as a result. And the other is the Disaster Relief National Dislocated Worker Grant, $14.8 million. The purpose there is to mitigate the impact of COVID in 2 main categories: disaster relief employment, which is looking at short-term employment to aid in humanitarian efforts where there might be delivery of services, delivery of like supplies and things of that nature, or cleanup efforts, so it's like sanitization of public office spaces. And then the other piece is similar to the career and training in that it's employment and training, but it doesn't include that enhancement. It's more specific to apprenticeship and OJT. I know that's a mouthful, but we'd be happy to answer any questions, and just if you want to email us or something of that nature around those funding efforts. Moving on, we see that, kind of wrapping things up, that noted observations and challenges continue to be just formula funding, shrinking formula funds, So rebounding participant enrollment and related costs are down, and then how we are working with the local boards to really optimize the outcomes under those two funding initiatives around the CARES Act funding. We continue to look at how we can embrace technology to keep our people safe and expanding outreach through expanding our virtual footprint, as well as data quality and management to help target, again, those most vulnerable populations. And then the other side of that is resource alignment, right? We talked about shrinking funds. How do we continue to identify and leverage resources to promote sustainability? And looking ahead to the next board meeting and some of the obligations there, we'll be reviewing first quarter F21 budget versus actual. We'll review the FY22 state reserve funds budget, then review and review and approval of any of the proposed formula allotment methodologies. And that's just basically as we get our new money, our program year 21 funds, allocation methodologies around rapid response and dislocated worker will be presented before the board via the oversight committee for review and approval. And then lastly, for consideration, Chairman, this presentation kind of continues to be WIO Title I centric. And so we would certainly appreciate from this board any thoughts or directions around expanding the review to include other workforce partners. And it's certainly a conversation we can have offline or some other forum. But thank you, Chairman Ray.
Thank you. I always do good work. I appreciate the insights to how particularly COVID has impacted the budget and the spending. So thank you for that. And would welcome any additions that the board would like to see as part of his report each time we meet. So please provide that to him. Any questions for Ivan? Okay, hearing none, we're happy to have from WIRED, I like the acronym here. If you look to your glossary, you'll see that that's Workforce Insights Research and Reporting Engine Division of Labor and Workforce Development. But we're happy to have Lisa Howard and Shatiz Rastogi with us.
Thank you, Chairman. Today, we're going to preview for you one of several dashboards that we've created in response to the pandemic. Today is the claims dashboard, and we created this claims dashboard based on what we thought were the three top things that we were being asked for after the pandemic started. So we built this dashboard to provide a visualization of how many unemployment claims have been filed, where were they filed, and in what industries were they filed on. And so Shatiz Rastogi is going to preview the dashboard for you today. So I'm going to turn it over to him. Okay, it's showing.
Thank you, Lisa. Let me see. Hello, everyone. Sorry, I was just setting my PowerPoint. Hello, everyone. I'm Shatiz Rastogi. I am a director in Workforce Insight Research and Reporting Engine Division. So today we are presenting some data-related information. So if you would like to know the progress of the economy, we have to look for the data, labor force data. If the economy is booming or declining to certain reasons, like the current pandemic situation, the labor force data can help us to determine which area or location is improving or impacting more, or which group of individuals are impacting more. There are several indicators which can help us to understand the workforce situation. One of the indicator is labor force participation rate. Labor force, you can see the labor force participation rate in 2007 when the recession was there. We were having pretty good, that time we were having pretty good labor force participation rate, 60, almost touching to 64.5, but it started, as soon as the recession hits, it start declining, and we are seeing it was declining till 2014, and again it started going up. But saying that, labor force depends on the two group of individuals, the employed, the working, and the non-working. So employed is already a part of the working individuals are already part of the economy. So we have to look more closely who are not working, so we can make them back on the work, so it will turn around the economy. So here is the unemployment rate for the last 15 years. You can see on the 2009 when the recession hit, we were having the highest unemployment rate, 10.2, and then after that it started declining. But in the recent months, we got this pandemic, and we are seeing in April it was 15% unemployment rate. It started declining, but still it's a long way to go to back to the 3.2 what we were having in March. So how we are going to, so we have to look these individuals who are not working or who are unemployed. So for looking those individuals, we need to look their characteristics. We have to look their characteristics geographically or the demographically. Geographically, like we have to look for the area where they are impacting, which areas are impacted more, or we have to look more LWDA levels, or we have to go to the county level to see which county is impacted more with this pandemic. We have to look for that demographically, means like what kind of age group is impacted more in that particular county or the area. Similarly, for the ethnicity, we have to look, or the education, industry, and occupation wise, we can look all these information. So to get this information on fingertip, we have built a dashboard to know the statistics of these unemployed workforce. So we have created this dashboard. Really, let me really quick this to actual dashboard. Are you all able to see my screen?
We can see it now.
Shadiz, we saw it and now it's gone again. So
Yeah, it was having some issue there, so
okay.
I just I'm sorry about that.
That's fine.
Yeah. Shatiz, why don't you stop your video feed while you're trying to share your screen?
Yeah, okay.
If you can make these available to us, if we don't already have them in our deck, maybe you can just speak to the talking points that you want to emphasize to us, and then we can review them on our own.
Okay, sure.
Shatiz, do you want me to try sharing my screen?
Yes, ma'am. Let me try one more time and see why it is not. It is showing all that.
So Lisa, just for the sake of time, if you could just, if one of the two of you could just speak to the points that you want our takeaways to be as a board.
We see it now, Lisa.
Sorry, by mistake. Okay. Anyway, thanks, Lisa. So here you are seeing this is the dashboard, what we are having for the UI claims. So on the left most column, you are on the top corner, you are seeing there is a date range where you can say that which date range you are looking for the UI claims. So here we are having from March 20th to November 1st, 2020, we have this date range here. You can search on the LWDA level. You can look for the, there are 9 LWDAs are there in this drop down. You can select any of these if you wanted to look the data for which particular. Let's go with the Greater Memphis this time. We look for the counties. There are whatever the LWDA you have selected, it will populate those counties. So we took the Shelby counties this time for this presentation. So you can look for the industry, you can look for you can search for a specific NAICS code, industry code. If you know, you can search on that one. We have a NAICS titles. There it's already, you will see all the industries available currently in Tennessee state. You will see all these titles are here. You can also look for the ages category, means like there are group ages. You can select whatever the age category you wanted to look and see what are the impact on those unemployment claims on this particular age group. We also have the education level where you can look for these education level. You can look for a specific if you wanted to look. But right now we are looking for the Greater Memphis and the county. On the bottom side, on the below side, you can see that there is 158 claims we are seeing from March 28 to November 1st, 2020 we received. And you will see there are some extra tabs are there, which is saying claims by week ending, claims by sector, claims by full NACIS 20, claims by age, and claims by education. So claims by week ending, you will see there is how many are the regular claims and how many are the pandemic claims, means like a COVID-19 impacted claims are there. So blue one is the COVID-19 impacted claims and the red ones are the regular claims. So we are seeing that in the March or April time, we are seeing the maximum cases we received, 10,654 claims we received. And if you're saying it's declining day by day, but again, it's not gone yet. So if we are looking for the sector wise, we can go for these are the major sectors what we have. So you can see which industry is impacted more. So we are seeing the accommodation and the food services has impacted more. And we can look for the NACI's top 20. These are the industries which are impacted more in the Shelby County. So we can see that the temporary help services are impacted more. These kind of industries impacted more in this pandemic. If you are looking for the age, claims by age, which category is impacted more, we can say that, okay, age 25 to 44 group of individuals are impacted more of this pandemic. Claims by education is there. If you wanted to look for the education wise, we can look that one as well. So this is the information we are having. It's in your fingertip. This will be available. It is available, and we are working on some more dashboards. I would like to invite call Ryan Allen. He is the assistant administrator in Wired division to give you an update on those upcoming dashboards. Ryan.
Yes, sure. I appreciate that presentation, Shatiz, and hopefully that was good information for the state board members. I want to talk just a little bit about, again, kind of going back to what Dr. Lovett said about we want to change the focus from being unemployment claimants to kind of reemployment. So a lot of the information that you saw on that current dashboard is just information that came from when they filed their claim. But having us be in an integrated system with unemployment insurance and the workforce services programs, we'll be able to tie that information together with the participant information about what programs, maybe workforce programs they've been involved in. And we hope to continue to work on those efforts to build out some more workforce dashboards that will help, again, inform the stakeholders on this board and others out there in the public. So we don't have anything to show today, but hopefully by the next board meeting, we can demo that dashboard.
Ryan, where can we access the dashboard that you showed?
Hey, Lisa, is that ready
yes.
to be released?
Yeah. I will give the link to Eiler and let Eiler send it out to all the board members.
Perfect. That would be fantastic. Okay, what questions do we have for the Wired team? I'm anxious to get access to that dashboard and start digging around. And I'm sure that's going to create a whole lot of questions once we start looking into that. But that seems like it's very helpful and something that I could really geek out about, really is the word probably. So thank you for putting that together, and I look forward to finding out more about that. Seeing and hearing no other questions for your team, thank you very much for the work that you've put into that. And I'd like to move on to hear about broadband from Crystal Ivy.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to the Workforce Development Board. My name is Crystal Ivy, and I'm the Broadband Director for the state of Tennessee. Our office is in the Department of Economic and Community Development, and I have a presentation. I'm going to actually stop my video just to help with bandwidth and share my screen. Hopefully you guys can see that. I wanted to start out with a picture of a photo of broadband deployment construction happening in a grant area in Tennessee. And this is actually a project that's happening in Coffee County, in a rural part of Coffee County. And just share a quote from Governor Lee to just kind of set the stage on the state's commitment in this area. He has mentioned many times that broadband is really a priority for him. And in here he says that he's committed to ensuring connectivity in every corner of our state as broadband impacts our goals for healthcare, education, economic development, and beyond. And certainly workforce development is on that list as well. We all, prior to the pandemic, prior to March this year, we knew the importance of broadband, but the pandemic has truly just elevated the conversation to a whole new level. Many of us are either working from home, or we have employees that are working from home. We have students that are trying to learn from home. And so, communities without broadband are just not able to participate fully in the economy, and they are really feeling left behind. And broadband is just absolutely necessary to function in today's increasingly digital economy. And the pandemic has just highlighted the inequities across the state between the haves and the have-nots in terms of broadband access. So I thought it would be helpful if I just explained briefly why there are areas with broadband and areas without broadband. So why are there some areas that are very well served with multiple service provider options, and other areas don't have a single option? And the reason for that is cost. Cost is by far the largest barrier to broadband deployment. So, as with any for-profit business, the for-profit broadband providers, as they are considering which areas they will deploy broadband infrastructure to and serve, they consider all the costs related to that deployment. And certainly it costs the same to lay a mile of fiber in an urban area as it does in a rural area. But the difference there is that there are more households in that more densely populated area that can subscribe to the service, and the provider can make their investment back quicker, essentially, in that more densely populated area. And so that's why you'll notice that many of the areas across the state that lack broadband are often in very rural areas or areas with low population density. There are other things that impact cost of broadband deployment as well, like geography, terrain. It's very expensive to deploy in mountainous areas or very rocky areas like we have in Middle Tennessee. So essentially, there are multiple things that can impact the cost, but truly the cost is the largest barrier. In addition to that, providers want to deploy infrastructure into areas where the adoption rate will be very high. So in the broadband world, when we talk about adoption, we are referring to someone subscribing to the service or signing up for service. And so,
Crystal,
yes.
If you'll pause for just a moment.
Sure.
In order to stay compliant with the YouTube presentation, we need to share your presentation on Patrice's screen, if that's possible. So sorry for the interruption. We just want to make sure that we're providing this information publicly.
Yes,
So,
I can unshare my screen and
yes. And let's see if we can switch over to Patrice here.
Sure. Okay. Just having some trouble seeing. Can you guys see the presentation?
I'm still seeing Crystal's screen. Here comes Patrice's.
There we go.
All right.
All right.
Okay,
All right.
I think we're good. So,
all right. So,
thank you. Sorry for that.
Yeah, no problem. So just was that wanted to highlight that second bullet point there that as providers are deploying broadband into an area, they also consider the adoption rate in that area. So, how many people are likely to sign up for their service, and the lack of familiarity with broadband, or certainly the affordability of the broadband can impact adoption of broadband as well. So all of those are factors when a provider is deciding where they will deploy service. We can go to the next slide. So in Tennessee, just to give a little background on where we are, in 2017, the Tennessee General Assembly passed the Tennessee Broadband Accessibility Act. And this legislation was really an effort to address persistent broadband gaps across the state. It had a variety of things in there, but I wanted to highlight three of them. The first is there was an investment component, so it created a grant program. This is a broadband infrastructure grant that is awarded to broadband providers to help them offset the cost of deploying broadband into unserved areas. I was mentioning the business case earlier for providers. This grant can help make that business case a little easier. The legislation also had a deregulation component where it allowed electric cooperatives to provide retail broadband to their electric members. So many of you may be served by an electric co-op. Prior to this legislation, electric cooperatives could not provide broadband, but they can do that now. And they often serve very rural areas where they may be the only provider. So they were an important part of the solution. And then lastly, there was a digital inclusion component. So I mentioned the importance of a community being digitally literate and having have had exposure to broadband and understand how to use it and how to maximize it to its fullest potential. So there was a digital inclusion component as well, where we have a portion of the grant funds that I just mentioned are awarded to local libraries for digital literacy programming. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So on that first bullet point where I mentioned investment, this is a slide I wanted to show, a screenshot. We have a dashboard on ECD's website where all of these dots are locations where we have awarded a broadband grant. I have some numbers here from FY18 to FY20. The state has awarded about $45 million in broadband funding. As I mentioned, these grants are awarded to broadband providers to deploy infrastructure into unserved areas, and we conduct an application process. So we score on a variety of factors on that application, including economic impact, need for grant funding, sustainability and implementation readiness of the applicant, community support. And as you can see, the grant funding is very popular among providers, as there are many areas across the state that are currently unserved. In the first 3 years of the program, we awarded $45 million, but we actually had about $190 million in grant requests. So again, very popular, very oversubscribed program. FY21, the current fiscal year that we are in, the General Assembly appropriated an additional $15 million for this fiscal year as well. But those are not yet announced. Those will be announced in the spring, but we have received applications for them, and that totaled around $40 million. So again, another year where many more requests than we have in available funding. So it remains a popular program, and providers continue to apply for this funding. But to date, we've awarded 39 grants for about $45 million to serve roughly 66,000 Tennesseans so far. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So in addition to that state grant funding, I wanted to just highlight briefly that certainly the state is not alone in this effort. The broadband funding that's available on the federal level has really increased in recent years. Since 2016, broadband providers in Tennessee have pulled down a little over $90 million in federal funding from a variety of different agencies. The FCC, or the Federal Communications Commission, has multiple programs, USDA, the Appalachian Regional Commission, and others. And at ECD, we really make a concerted effort to make sure that providers don't just know about our state program, but they are also aware of federal funding opportunities available to them. It's certainly, broadband is a very expensive venture, and so it's important that they know all of the funding opportunities that are available to them. It's definitely going to require a group effort. But to date, they've been successful so far in doing that at a little over $90 million in federal funding. Next slide. So in addition to that federal funding, I also wanted to highlight that in August of 2020, Governor Lee dedicated a little over $60 million of Tennessee's coronavirus relief fund to broadband. This project was called the Tennessee Emergency Broadband Fund. And as I mentioned earlier, the COVID-19 pandemic has really had an impact on unconnected communities across Tennessee. The CARES Act funding necessitates that these projects must be completed by the end of the year. So if we can believe it, that's next month already. So these projects are almost done. And when they are completed, they will serve an additional 60,000 Tennesseans. This was very exciting, really appreciative of Governor Lee dedicating this funding. I mean, it essentially doubled the state grant investment to date. And on the next slide, I have a few photos of construction. I'm a big broadband construction nerd, so this might not be interesting to anyone else, but I wanted to show some photos of the construction actually happening with these CARES Act projects. There's construction happening in all corners of the state right now. These projects were funded through the Tennessee Emergency Broadband Fund, and as you can see, they're in incredibly rural areas. In Robertson County, very rural area there. In Marion County, we're going, over the top of a mountain. In Henry County, I think that picture is right next to a cornfield. So again, just incredibly rural areas that, as you can imagine, if it were not for this CARES Act funding, would likely not have broadband for a very long time. So excited about these projects. Next slide. Again, hate to keep harping on this, but I thought it was really important to just, again, highlight COVID-19 and its impact on unconnected communities. At ECD in particular, we already, prior to the pandemic, received constituent and provider calls, looking for resources for broadband service. And since March, those calls have significantly increased. They are either provider calls, so they are from broadband providers that are seeing a significant increase in the number of people that are calling them and wanting service. Maybe before the pandemic, they didn't really see a need for service or they didn't want it, but now that they do, so they're seeing a significant increase in those calls, and they're then calling us to see if there are any resources available to help them with that. We're also receiving calls for access to free Wi-Fi. Certainly that's not a long-term solution for someone, but it can be kind of an immediate or emergency stopgap. And then just folks calling us and seeking help and learning who the providers are in their area and how they can get service. We received all of these calls prior to the pandemic, but they've significantly increased in the last few months. Next slide. So I wanted, in addition to, we have a tn.gov/broadband as our regular website, but we've added a COVID-19 broadband resources page as a result of this increase in questions that we're getting. This site has a variety of things on it, but I highlighted a few here. Hotspot locations where folks can go connect to free Wi-Fi, free and low-cost internet plans. That's a very common question we're getting, is from folks that do have access to broadband right outside their house, but maybe they can't actually afford the service. So looking for low-cost plans, and additional federal and state educational resources as well. So we have launched that page in April or so. All right, next slide. So I've talked about a lot of numbers. I wanted to just do a recap here. Since 2018, $120 million in state funding, including the CARES Act, has been appropriated for broadband projects. And about 125,000 Tennesseans will receive high-speed internet as a result of the 105 that's been awarded to date. I noted earlier that the current fiscal year that we're in, that $15 million, has not yet been awarded, so that's how we come to the $120 million number. But so it's very exciting that progress is happening, and a lot of Tennesseans have gotten service in the last couple of years as a result of this funding, but there are still at least 500,000 Tennesseans, according to the FCC, that lack broadband access. So there's more work to do. Certainly, we want to continue pushing for additional deployment into unserved areas and supporting folks and making it possible for them to adopt the service once it is available to them so they can truly maximize the benefits of broadband. So we will keep doing that work. Next slide. Okay, I wanted to include my contact information here as well. Please feel free to reach out if I can assist in any way, and I'm happy to take any questions as well.
Crystal, thank you. I really appreciate this information, and it's good to see this level of investment being put toward it. I haven't been at one of these board meetings yet where someone doesn't bring up the need to improve connectivity for particularly the rural areas and residents. So it might also be helpful, in the future to say, okay, we've got that 500,000 resident number, right? And we're putting this many dollars toward it. If we just show a correlation to say, as this many dollars are invested, that 500,000 number is reduced by this many, per dollar. So you had one slide in there that says, okay, we put $60 million toward 60,000 residents, so it's about $1,000 per resident, right? So for every $1,000, how many people can we take off that list of unconnected? And then I think you made a great point that they may have access, but it's totally unaffordable because it's $50, $60, $70, $100 a month.
Right.
It's right outside their door. But if it's, if it's beyond my financial means to tap into it, because there's only the one choice, which happens a lot. I've got it, but it's a choice of one, which isn't really a competitive situation. So
right.
maybe creating a little bit of opportunity for choice to get those prices down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in Tennessee, we have one of the lowest adoption rates in the country. Of the Tennesseans that do have access, so not that 500,000, but the folks that actually do have a line running by their house, we're at about 55% of Tennesseans with access that actually have subscribed to a service. So you're absolutely right. The access is a piece, getting the infrastructure in place is a piece, but also making it available to folks when it is accessible to them, making sure they can actually sign up for the service. I'm happy to answer any questions or, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say questions for Crystal and her presentation. We are, for the folks who are listening on YouTube and joining us through that means, we will add the recording of this meeting to the Tennessee.gov workforce website. I know that the YouTube connection was a little bit difficult at the end, so we'll go ahead and put the full recording on there if you want to access that later on. Crystal, thank you. I see no further questions, but a really good report, and I'm glad we're heading in the right direction as far as getting our residents connected. It's just going to continue to be more of an issue as we try to provide these resources, online learning, all of that is just going to be continuing to grow. So thank you for the work that your team's doing.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for your time today, your engagement, improvements that this team continues to make. Commissioner, do you have any other thoughts for the board before we sign off?
No, I would like to say the same thing, Tim. We greatly appreciate everybody's time and your leadership and your guidance for us, and as much support that you give us, we greatly appreciate that, but it's okay to challenge as well. So as we continue to walk through, I won't say unprecedented times, but I just did. We're getting better. We're going to come out on the other side of this thing a lot better than we went in. That's for sure. But we have room to improve. So that interaction between this board is very, very important, and we greatly appreciate it. And the more honest, the better, quite frankly. So thank you, Chairman. And I'll I'll say one more thing. Everybody, stay well and be safe. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. It's possible for the board that we'll try to do a strategy planning session in December, also likely a virtual format if we can make that happen. So be looking for the possibility of that to come up in the next few weeks. We'll try to give you as much heads up notice as possible. And then our board meetings in 2021 will be March 26th, June 18th, August 27th, and November 12th. We'll make those available to you again, but just to get your March 26th is the next one you need to have on your radar and your calendar for 2021. Okay, well, thank you to everybody. I appreciate your time today. Went just a little bit over, but appreciate everybody's attentiveness and all the presenters particularly. So happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Stay well and enjoy your holidays.